Well, petroleum prices have increased by 23%, and this has triggered concerns about transparency as far as the National Petroleum Authority is concerned. Well, Ghanaians are, however, displeased at the increment of not only the petroleum prices, but transport fares.
Since 2 days ago, they started to talk about on the radio. The national chairman, they asked him, they discussed with the radio station and your TV station, they call him. Then he told us that Monday, they should start. They will increase the petrol today, then we start the first.
Well, a lot of these concerns are coming up shortly. This is today's big story with me, Prince Mika. Welcome to the program. Now, some weeks ago, the National Petroleum Authority, that's the NPA, mentioned that Ghanaians will be spared of imminent increase in fuel prices, at least till July 1st, 2014, following fuel shortage some weeks back. Now, the Public Relations Officer of the National Petroleum Authority, Yaro Kasambata, in an interview explained that there will be no increment, at least for the next 2 weeks. And true to his words, exactly 2 weeks after this statement, fuel prices have been increased between 15 to 23%, while the NPA announced this increment on Sunday to the displeasure of many Ghanaians. The price of petrol saw the highest increase. It has been attributed to, well, it's actually 23% increment now as far as petrol is concerned, and it's been attributed to the removal of fuel price subsidies. We'll get into that shortly. But government has been given some explanation. We'll let you hear what government has been saying as far as that one is concerned. But here's what some people have been telling us on the streets of Accra with regards to the petroleum price increment and subsequently transport fare increment as well.
Since 2 days ago, they started to talk about on the radio. The national chairman, they asked him, they discussed with the radio station and your TV station, they call him. Then he told us that Monday they should start. They will increase the petrol today, then we start the first. So they agree with the Minister of Transport, whatever it is. They agree before they give the signal on the air that they should take it. They'll bring letters to confirm. Now, because now if I'm buying petrol at that price, then my boss instructed me, like the minister, they call a minister name on the radio or TV, that they give a minister. If they dismiss you from the TV and the radio. The same as our national chairman issue a statement, everybody should take the 15% from Monday going. So we have to accept and move on.
No, young driver for Nankasa, the Enyama. If we say I buy to petrol, so more than we come 5 times. I feel not the 15%. As a moon say, I buy who say, and your petrol can be a Kajuma. You use tie, you use fuel, you use bread food, you use oil. BBI increasing oil near a ton of 250 and then 400,000. So what I say, as a driver, I buy who say, young driver for yes, you're gonna for. So what I say. You tell us by your chest school fees. You be our my moon. Yes, you be. I buy to see and do. And you know, not passing us so the trouble am I.
One of the Maya. And you and Yankasa penny, the tomorrow, what to be a Tuesday, I was here and so in fact 1,005 pence or so. Just I'm wired. Says I'm a quarter time a quarter 3 million, my course is here, I say 4 million. So it is I'm wired. Just here, why you're in my home. And to say Bassana, no, I'm wired. What's all so I will be doing my do I say, Amy, Ube Chastica, Ube do I Amy for me as be as a lances.
They say not very quiet. Am I able money? I also want to petrol, I want to tax me. Can't only tax so much, petrol so much. Tom to me fair on that old fair in beam. So my fair for my Sako wants 80% so much. For money, my thing. They say not fair and white. If we start from saying free woman, but to a matum, Tamana Bassam, a first passes so much to pass him, Tamana Bassam.
As I say, no, sending a man, Yatutu and Yamano, and no fuel, no. They say, Ama, I had the Amay, I had the Amay, if you say, see a fuel no ecosra. Yeah, Tony, man, so be a cotonia man, or no, but 20 money. nti se bia ene ukone se yatu enema no ma osuso ba obe increase unema no edu tembia no ema nipa ye ho kire yen.
Well, you heard those drivers there expressing their concerns. But as a result of government's decision to remove subsidies on petroleum products, consumers would have to pay, the full cost. And the decision was energized by some consumers who indicated their readiness to pay the full cost of petroleum products when the discussion on the payment of fuel subsidies came up. Following up the increment of fuel price, the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council also announced on Saturday a 15% increase in transport fares with effect from Monday. That's today, 14th of July, 2014. And just as you heard those drivers there, they are totally unhappy with regards to the situation. But there are some points being made by ASEP, for instance, and they are asking a number of questions with regards to subsidies and how the National Petroleum Authority has not been transparent. But let me let you know this, that the Metro Mass Transit Limited has also announced that fares will remain unchanged across the country. And now, talk about the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Now, they are not only worried about the 23% increment in petroleum prices, but they are asking the National Petroleum Authority to be more transparent. Benjamin Boache is with ASEP, and he joins us on today's big story. Benjamin, thank you very much for joining us on the phone lines.
Thank you very much, brother. How are you?
I am doing well. Now, you are talking about transparency. As far as the NPA is concerned, haven't they been transparent enough?
I think recently you have heard other people suggest that there are no subsidy even on the petroleum products. And that can only be as a result of lack of greater openness in what subsidy actually means. Because if you don't interpret your own words, then you allow others to also come in with their own interpretation. So it will be proper for NPA to tell Ghanaians what subsidy means and what kind of subsidy we have, because we have various types of subsidies. So if you are claiming subsidy, then you need to explain to Ghanaians what subsidy is so that you clear that ambiguity and people are clear in their minds whether there are subsidies or not. And that is the level of transparency we want to see in the pricing regime that we have now. But those of us who understand, the little that they put out, we always see that there are some subsidies, on the product. And we have been calling for its removal because what you are doing in the long run is to pile up debt, not just for generations alive today, but for children yet unborn. So we think that that is not a proper way of managing the country, and therefore, if there is room for people to pay for a product they utilize, then you give them the opportunity to do so.
I'm going to bring in Dr. Charles Rakubrobe in shortly. Now, he's been making some points as far as the petroleum price increment is concerned. And shortly, I'll put on the screens the petroleum price build-up for this time around, and viewers can better appreciate it. But talk about 23%. Was that really what we were expecting?
That is because we have not been bold to follow the automatic price adjustment. We sit down for prices to pile up, then we push everything onto the consumer. I heard the finance minister say last week that they were not going to put such a jolt on the economy, and yet they've gone ahead to do the same. So these are the problems we always hint that we should try and avoid. When it becomes necessary to adjust prices, just go ahead and do it, and not do the usual politics with it, and then in the end, you hit Ghanaians with such a big jump in prices. It's not good for public confidence in the entire economy in general. So we think that we should follow the automatic price adjustment and let them move us and when it becomes necessary. I mean, if you cannot manage the economy to stabilize your city, you don't also have to stop prices from moving up, So those are options that we have to carefully choose and manage things properly.
And you have perused the petroleum price build-up just as we're going to display shortly on the screens for our viewers. Now, looking at the build-up for this quarter of the year, there are some taxes which many, including Dr. Charles Rekubrobe, have questioned, especially the one that has to do with the Tema oil refinery, the toll recovery debt for that matter. Now, are there any justification in questioning some of these taxes and what it's supposed to be used for?
Of course. As for questioning the tax levels and the various components of the build-up, I mean, it's subject to everybody's opinion, and everybody will have the right to critique it. For example, if you're talking about toll debt recovery levy, which attracts about 8 pesos on each liter of premium, of course, you need to demand accountability how that amount is being utilized. And we see toll always, struggling to raise capital to do business. And if we still continue to pay over a decade, paying toll debt recovery levy, and they are still indebted, then of course it raises questions, as to why that is happening. And that is legitimate to do. Road fund, for example, also has a component. Who accounts for that levy? It's also legitimate. We can continue to debate the other components, in there, which demands accountability and, of course, proper accounting for all those things. But it doesn't mean that there is no subsidy on petroleum products.
But should the National Petroleum Authority be blamed squarely for these issues and these issues that are being raised? I mean, these questions that are being raised. Should the NPA take the blame? Aren't they doing their work?
Who is NPA, first of all? I mean, NPA is the baby of the president. We operate on the executive presidency, and the president hire and fire everybody. So you cannot blame NPA when the boss, the one who employs the executive director, tells you that, hey, don't increase prices, wait. And they have no choice than to wait because you are hired and fired by the president. So NPA, as it is now, is just another political wing, sitting there to be told what to do.
Rekubrobe again argues that the development is quite unfortunate because Ghanaians should not be made to pay for the operations of a refinery which is not refining anything. Well, anyway, he's on the line. Let's get more from him. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us on today's Big Story.
Thank you.
Okay, so who is to blame for this? I mean, if TOR is not working...
Look, first of all, let me correct what your last speaker said. The NPA is a body established by law. It, like all other bodies, has its chief executive appointed by the president. So it is not a part of the NDC. There is a law establishing it, and it's covered properly. The issue I was raising this morning is that for 14 years, we've had toll recovery debt. The refinery has not been operating for best part of 2 or 3 years. We don't know what debts they are. We don't know how much money has been collected. And yet, something which was put in 2001, we are still paying for. We are paying for bust, even though the BVCs are importing and storing the products. We are paying for processing, even though toll is not running. The problem with the NPA is not its legitimacy, it's lack of transparency.
And so that goes to suggest that both of you are on the same tangent.
No, we are not. We are absolutely not. The legitimacy of the NPA must never be questioned.
In as much as you talk about the need for them to be transparent.
Transparency is absolutely important, but we must not throw the baby out with the bathwater by trying to paint the NPA as the political body.
Okay, Doc, on the issue of subsidies and some of the taxes involved, as far as the increment is concerned, how do you want the NPA to come out on this? In as much as you push for transparency.
I came to this country in 1988. The first thing I did was to remove subsidies from petrol. There has not been any subsidies on petrol or petroleum products since 1989. So I want to know, if government says it's subsidizing petrol, where is it taking money from where to subsidize petrol? If you look at the price build-up, there's something there called cross-subsidy levy. That is paid by you and I. Anytime we buy fuel, we pay that levy. That is the levy that's being used or was being used to subsidize some products are LPG, premix, etc. But it is an absolute act of lie for any government, and it's not just this government, previous government did the same, to suggest that they are subsidizing fuel in this country. Rather, you know, the office that was rented by the MPA for 65,000, we have paid for it. The all the expenses of a lot of bodies, you know, the Energy Commission, we pay for it. These are all statutory taxes that we pay. Not only that, we contribute in the form of excise duty to the revenue that the Ghana Revenue Authority collects. Where is that the word subsidy that we are talking about?
Okay, let me bring Benjamin in. Benjamin, is this the kind of transparency that you're asking for? These questions that Dr. Rakubrobe is raising. I mean, exactly where would you want the MPA to lie on this?
I think, first of all, I did not question the legality of NPA. But the point I was driving at was that the boss of NPA today can be hired and fired. And it's a fact out there. And NPA, as it is now, if it decides to increase prices and the political authority tells NPA not to do so, they're not going to do it. And these are challenges that affect, you know, their role and capacity to work according to the way they were structured, you know, to operate. And that was the point that I was making. I wasn't saying that it was a political party. Or
okay, so back to the issue of transparency and the points that Dr. Rakubrobe raised.
Yes, so that's what I was saying. If they are transparent enough for us to know how much cross-subsidization is there, and is it able to offset the total amount of subsidy, then Ghanaians can understand. But as it is now, even though you see a cross-subsidy there, it is not enough to cater for the under-recoveries and cater for exchange losses and all those losses. So government obviously have to push in, you know, those margins, and that's where the subsidy comes in. But if we want to go... Yeah.
Right. I was just going to say that we're trying to get the National Petroleum Authority on this, but apparently their phones are off. But going back to the MPA, let's be fair to them. At least with a cost build-up, it's on their website, and anyone who has access to the internet obviously can go on the website and take a look at the breakdown. Is that not the kind of transparency we need?
Yes, it's part of it. But I mean, how many people even have access to website in this country? What is the internet penetration in this country? You know, and even if Dr. Rakubrobe is questioning the level of subsidy on our product, then you can know to what extent people are not convinced of what subsidy they are talking about. So they need to do more education and explain to Ghanaians what subsidy they are talking about and how that subsidy comes about. I think that is important from their end.
Doc, you're worried about the fact that we're paying refinery margin when the refinery recovery costs, the refinery is not working at all. Going forward, exactly what do you expect to be done? Hello, Doc. Well, it appears
refine crude oil and then give it to Bust and bust the distribution. Now, since deregulation, and in fact, for much of the last 5 years, the refinery has stopped operating. The BDCs have come in. Bust is collecting money. What you have, you see, is the refinery collecting money, debt that we've been paying for 14 years. The Bust is collecting money even though the BDCs are doing all the work. So there's a lot of hidden costs that we, the consumers, are having to pay for. Let me tell you what government means by subsidy. Because the exchange rates are unstable, sometimes government forgets its duty that every 2 weeks it must review petrol prices. So instead of, sometimes it postpones it for several months, and then you get what you've got today, 24% increase. That's not subsidy. That's a failure to act properly as a government. So, but I insist, and I want anybody to give me figures to prove otherwise, that government is taking money from any other sources to pay subsidy. Now, the way forward is that the MPA needs to be more transparent. If indeed we have deregulated and we are no longer using the refinery, we shouldn't be paying any cost for the refinery. If Bust has abdicated its duty to actually distribute petroleum in bulk, then we should not be paying any margins to Bust we should not be paying the strategic storage to bust. You know, I do know about these things because I established the whole thing in 1988. So what you have is that we, the consumers, have been asked to pay for costs, which somebody else has been responsibility for. So naturally, you have to pay the BVCs for their work. Now, as I said this morning, the U.S. is the richest economy in the world. They sell gasoline for 258 pesos per liter. We are selling it for 336. Their minimum wage is 174 cedis per day for an 8-hour day. Our minimum wage is 6 cedis. So when they talk about paying realistic prices, I don't know what realism means.
Okay.
We really must not butcher the English language for what it doesn't mean.
But what about you, Benjamin? Do you see us paying realistic prices in any way?
That is for the NPA to stick to the formula that they have come up with. I think those under recoveries, when they pay with public funds, and that constitutes the subsidy that has been contentious.
If they don't pay the public funds, that's why your jump has gone up to 24%. If they hadn't postponed the previous ones, so they claw back what they didn't do so that they can pay pay the BVC.
Yes.
Very well, Benjamin.
Yes, Doctor, so that's why it's necessary for us to push for this transparency so we know the figures.
Exactly.
What has been accumulated.
They publish the price build-up.
What the figures are, and
there's a hidden price build-up. There's a lack of transparency in many spheres.
The point which you've made, Doc, just hold on for me. Let's hear Benjamin for a while. Benjamin.
Yes, so, I mean, it's the same point we are making, that NPA has to come out and be more transparent about all the levies that are put on the product so that we know what each of them, goes to do. Then the public can be convinced about what they talk about. Other than that, we are going to continue to have this back and forth, when they are not willing to come out with the true state of affairs.
Very well. All right, thank you very much, Benjamin Boache, Programs Officer, ASAP. But, Doc, finally, before I let you go, how worried should we be at this particular moment? I mean, when you listen in to the number of people who spoke to us earlier on. Yes, Doc.
Let me tell you the problem. The problem is not petroleum prices going up. The whole economy is distorted when petroleum prices go up. Already transport has gone up. Food products will go up. Everything in this country will go up. And the effects of petroleum prices is to distort our economy. The city will fall further. And that is why the management of the petroleum prices is a very sensitive matter. People shouldn't act like automatons, like robots, and say that exchange rates have gone up, therefore prices have gone up. Don't forget, we have something called the stabilization fund, which we are taking from our crude oil revenues. It's important to protect the pricing of petroleum products because all the economic woes we face come from this increase in petroleum products. But the point I'm trying to make ultimately is that both America and Ghana buy petrol from the same international market. Why should we be paying more? Why should we be paying more? And we earn 50 times less per minimum wage.
Very well. All right, Dr. Charles Reku-Brobe, thank you very much for talking to us here on today's Big Story. He's an energy expert. So you heard him talk about the fact that we've had to pay for the inefficiencies of the refinery and the bulk oil storage, and that is why we are paying more. Now, he has also been making a point that Tema Oil Refinery has not been operated for a long time, but he's asking, why are we paying, as far as the wages of the workers of TOR is concerned? And Boss does not own any products, and he's wondering exactly why these, anomalies are there. Let me bring in the Member of Parliament for Boase West constituency, Honorable Kwaku Kwate. Honorable, thank you very much for joining us on today's Big Story.
Thank you for having me. Good evening to your listeners.
So we've heard Benjamin from the Africa Center for Energy Policy and Dr. Charles Reku Brobe telling us that, look, the National Petroleum Authority needs to be transparent as far as the petroleum price build-up is concerned. Now, for you, generally, with the increment of petroleum products and subsequently the increment of transport fares, exactly what are the major concerns that you have?
Well, to begin with, I think we need more transparency in petroleum pricing in this country. You see, the earlier persons whose name you mentioned have made points about the toll debt recovery levy, questioning whether we ought to be paying that levy, given that toll itself isn't operating. Now, there are other lines in the build-up that need questioning. For instance, we still have the exploration levy that goes to GNPC. Now, we know per the Petroleum Revenue Management Act that provision has been made for GNPC. So that line also has to be questioned. Plus, the breakdown of the ex-refinery price. You know, we have the ex-refinery price, then you add the taxes, you add the distribution, other margin, and then you arrive at the ex-pump price. Now, we ought to know what exactly is in the ex-refinery price. Because if you recall that it is within this ex-refinery price that government some time ago smuggled the ex-refinery differential, about which the court ruled that we didn't have to have that. So we need transparency in the pricing. We must have an open, frank discussion about the various lines so we know whether we ought to continue paying the levy. But more broadly, on a specific case of the subsidy,
right?
The current operative policy of government is no subsidy, and this has been so since 2011. But if we recall, any time government or the NPA announces fuel prices higher than the existing, we have to go through this ritual again of discussing whether or not we should remove subsidy. The whole point about a bi-weekly review of prices was a feature of subsidy removal as a policy by this government. The idea was that every 2 weeks we would look at the prices, look at the input, the things you're feeding in the formula.
Honorable Kwarteng, you probably would want to reposition yourself. Your line is a bit muffled. But in as much as you build your point on where we should lie as far as subsidy is concerned, should we therefore throw our hands in despair and say that, look, all seem lost because it looks like it's cyclical. Almost any time there's a petroleum price increment, this particular issue comes up. Unfortunately, the line is very bad, Honorable Kwarteng, but I certainly know that this discussion will go on for some time now. We're not going to leave it here. Coming up shortly, JN Interactive with Marian Toure. Stay tuned.